All right, my name's Dave Chrisman. I'm NBWA's Vice President of State Affairs, but maybe more relevant for today, I'm also the Executive Director or Staff Manager of the Beer Industry Electronic Commerce Coalition, the BIECC. See here on the screen, this is a working group that, believe it or not, has been around since 1994. A lot of people probably wouldn't think there was e-commerce in 1994, but there was. And so this is a group of brewers, distributors, solution providers that really our goal is to provide industry education, to represent the industry when there's new technologies, new business models, things that each individual brewer or distributor might not have to fight themselves, but that we could be an industry voice for. This is our current memberships, a little bit of an eye chart, but you see a real good collection of brewers of all different sizes, as well as distributor members. We very purposely make sure we have geographic balance, size of business balance, brands balance. We want to make sure we have kind of all voices heard within our working group. I'm going to open with just a few slides of some of the work projects we've been getting to, or that we've been working on, and then we'll transition into talk about cybersecurity today. Our newest publication that just came out literally about a week and a half ago is a new white paper that's focused on the benefits of automation or making more efficient the ordering process between distributors and their supplier partners. Most of you, if you're working with Anheuser-Busch or Molson Coors or Constellation, that's already a pretty automated process. But our latest DPR report showed that the average distributor, I think, is carrying about 60 different supplier brands right now, and for a lot of those suppliers, it's still spreadsheets and PDF forms and emails and phone calls and kind of a laborious way of placing and receiving orders. So, this just talks about what some of the solutions are that are out there and ways that, hopefully it makes a distributor's life easier, but even the brewers as well. The BA is, also sharing this paper with their membership because they don't want to get 15 or 20 different spreadsheets that they have to then compile and put into production forecasts and things like that. So we'll have copies of that paper on the show floor tomorrow at the NBWA booth. So if you're interested, please go grab a copy. This group has also spent a bunch of time over the last year focused on retail online ordering platforms. We put an online education tool out last year that really just kind of shares the landscape of what's out there when it comes to your retailers placing online orders. During the pandemic, just about every distributor out there, it seemed, was looking at different solutions to take some online orders. And this tool is really, sharing the benefits of online ordering. It's giving the landscape of what solutions are available to you. And then we have some great best practices of, how do you communicate that you're going to online ordering to your sales team, to your internal team, what changes need to be made, and at the same time, how do you communicate that to your retail customers and make it a complement to the service you're already providing and not a replacement or a reduction in service to them. So again, check it out. It's on the BICC's website, and we will be updating it over the next few months as well. One thing that we've talked a lot about over the last few years is the launch of our master product catalog. Just about a year ago now, we finally announced the release of this product catalog. We've about 7,000 brands in it right now, a number of different suppliers, but certainly a long way to go to get it to where we want. We're working with a company called Syndigo. You see the website there on the screen. If you go there, there's a form that you can fill out, and as a distributor, you can get open and free access to this. We'd love for you to share it with your supplier partners so that they can freely upload their brands into the catalog, and we can continue to see it grow. The goal of this was we want one place that anyone in the industry can send people to get accurate, reliable product information, graphics, images, and core attributes for every beer brand out there. But let's get into cybersecurity, and here's just a few goals of what we hope to cover today. Obviously, we've got some experts here. I am not the expert when it comes to cybersecurity, but kind of understand how some of these attacks work, where your businesses might be vulnerable. Here's some best practices from these people up front of how they mitigate risks within their business, some of the solutions that they work with. And then one thing we are doing, and we did a webinar in the spring, and as NBWA launches a new website in about a month, we're going to have an online community group, and we're going to have one that's specifically focused on cybersecurity and best practices within that side of the business. So anyone that's interested in signing up with that, reach out to us. We'll be doing some additional communications, but we want brewers and distributors to be able to trade and share best practices, share threats that they've seen within their business so that other people can be prepared, and we're kind of excited to see that come together here in the next few months. Before I introduce our speakers, one of our speakers who is going to present today is a gentleman by the name of Greg Fithian. Greg's with J.J. Taylor Companies in Florida, and as you might imagine, after Hurricane Ian last week and they're having a warehouse in Fort Myers, he was unable to make this trip today, but he sends his regrets, and I did just want to lead off by sharing a few of his slides. I'm not going to be able to speak to him near as well as he could, but his kind of three buckets that he wanted to leave the audience with and that he's presented to us in the past are, make sure you have layers of security. We'll get to a slide on that. Make sure you have a backup strategy. If you do experience a cyber attack, if you lose your systems, what is your backup strategy? And then same thing, what's your disaster recovery scenario? How do you rebuild if somehow you lost access to all of your back-end systems? So this might, I know some people don't like taking pictures of slides, but if you want to take pictures of any of his slides, this is the solutions he suggests for sort of that layered approach to security. This is your perimeter, your network, your administrative security, data security, just kind of all the different sorts of backups and antivirus and email filtering and everything else that they implement at J.J. Taylor Companies. I see one more person snapping, then I'll keep going. He talks about that backup theory and make sure your backups are tamper-proof. Look at your internal and external operations. Are your backups vulnerable? Not just your front-end systems. Know where sensitive data is and how you're protecting it. And store your data at multiple locations. It can be on-site, it can be off-site, cold storage, you name it. And then I think maybe his most relevant, maybe not most relevant, but he talked about you should tier your applications within your business. What are the ones that you need to operate your business? And he calls those tier ones, and you see at the bottom that within their business they replicate those platforms so that if they do need to go to a backup, it's done quicker and literally it's being replicated in an offsite location. Then you have your tier 2 and your tier 3 that are maybe the nice to haves and the things that you couldn't go a long time without, but you can still roll trucks and you can still sell beer if some of those systems might be down for some period of time. And then lastly, from Greg, this is the disaster recovery scenario that he talked about. Just, what are your plans? And you see one of the potential solutions on there is even paying the ransom. Nobody wants to pay ransom, but that at least has to be something you consider if your business is being held hostage. What are you going to do when that disaster comes? So just wanted to open with those. These are the real experts that I want to turn it over to now, though. Bill Kraish from Encompass is going to lead us off and kind of give us some big picture, what we're seeing in the world of cybersecurity, where some of these attacks are coming from. Justin Ainsworth will then follow him. Justin's with Sierra Nevada Brewing Company, kind of giving the brewer's perspective of what they face, not just within their cyber business, but they run retail operations and they directly interface with consumers and customers, and how do they have to keep all of their things safe that way as well. Then we have two distributors, and a huge thanks to both of these guys. With Greg unable to make it, and we actually had one other distributor who was going to be able to be with us today that couldn't make it. So both of these guys really in the last week have agreed to sort of pinch hit and talk about what they're doing in their businesses to protect cybersecurity and mitigate the risks around it. So excited to hear from both Nate and Terry to close things out. We'll do Q&A at the end, although if you want to interrupt these guys as they go, just raise a hand and we'll be happy to answer any questions. But with no further ado, Bill, take it away. Thank you all.
Hello. Who here would view themselves as the IT leader in their organization? A handful. This isn't for you. This is not for the IT leader. This is for the business leader. This is for the folks that feel like they're not technically equipped to handle cybersecurity as a problem. The takeaways that I want to leave you with are threats are real, and companies are generally underprepared to handle those. But there is something that you can do about it. Even as a business leader, without the technical background, there is something that you can do. And one of the themes is that you can always and continually keep getting better and better and better, because your cybersecurity posture today, if it's better in a year, in 5 years, and 10 years from now, that's the goal. Cybersecurity is a journey, it is not a destination. So you want to keep getting better over and over again. Some data that I pulled together, and this is just stuff you can Google. This is not my information exactly, but what we see is that there is a lot more cyber crime today than there were a year ago or 2 years ago or 3 years ago. It's continuing to increase. Since 2019, it's up 600%. We see that most cybersecurity attacks in that 600% are targeting food and beverage. And 43% of that is looking at small to medium-sized businesses. According to the Bureau of Labor Management Statistics, most beer distributors fall into that category, right? So we are at the epicenter of where cybercrime is happening. One of the really interesting pieces here is that 95% of all cyber attacks involve some element of human error, which means they're likely able to be prevented. And then the last piece was, according to a survey, that only 16% of companies felt that they were actually prepared for cybercrime. And this is when they asked the non-IT leader of these businesses, 16% of them said, nope, we're not prepared or underprepared. I'm going to skip this. It's just more data. This is the process to become prepared. And what I'm not going to talk to you about are very specific tools that you're going to use or things you can subscribe to. I'm talking about blending cybersecurity posture into your business from day one. So the first thing is threats and understanding that threats are real and knowing where they come from. Next is you want to do an assessment of your company. What are your assets that are potentially vulnerable? And then come up with your mitigation strategies, and then turn those first couple of steps into a system that you can repeat over and over and over again. So that means this year you get better, next year you're even better, 5 years from now you're really good. And this is you taking action. This slide is new information to me, really. What it's showing is where cyber attacks are coming from. I did not know this until I found this out, but it's organized crime is the number one group of the bad guys that are out there. And because usually when you hear about cybercrime, you hear about, oh, it's Russia or it's China or somebody like that. That's the perpetrators. When in reality, it's not. These are just normal criminals. You can see the state affiliated way down there on the bottom. That's China or Russia that's going to come get it. And really in our industry, China and Russia, we don't really have to worry about, because bad guys, they have evil plans. There's two evil plans that these bad guys have. One of them is they want to steal your data and then sell it. Coors Light sales in Des Moines, Iowa is only valuable to one person, and that's Iowa Beverage. Nobody else wants to buy that, right? So when they steal it, they ransom it and they sell it back to Iowa Beverage. This is what ransomware is. That's plan number one. That's what organized crime is trying to do. Everyone else is probably trying to access your resources to do something bad, right? When they compromise all of your computing power, they can use that to cause chaos in the world somewhere, which makes it easy for them eventually to steal some valuable resource later. we don't have a lot of resources, so those state actors are not going to come after your email server, highly unlikely. But what the organized crime is going to do is come after your sales data because they can turn around and sell it back to you. So as we get into the process of how to prepare for cybercrime and how to get better, the first thing that you want to do is take an inventory of your resources. And these are going to be all of the things in your business that are connected to the internet and if they were compromised, would that limit your ability to do business, right? Would that compromise? And you saw Greg's slides earlier, it said tier 1, RAS, WMS, those things were on the top, right? This is what you're doing when you're building your inventory. What is going to be connected to the internet that could cause a problem if it was unavailable. And then there's stuff that's going to go all the way down the list. Things that, yeah, it's online, but if it got compromised, it wouldn't matter, right? We would still be able to deliver beer. It wouldn't be a big deal. Once we've cataloged everything that all of our resources, the next thing to do is do a risk assessment and apply the score. And what we're doing is we're finding out how likely it would be to compromise this asset, the difficulty to detect that it's compromised, and then the impact to the business. That'll give you a score of everything, all of your resources. You're going to use that score to go into mitigation. Because the stuff that's high on the list, you want to spend the most time and resources mitigating against. The stuff that's lower on the list, that's where you're going to spend the least amount of time. And the stuff that's lower on the list can be simple things like updating the password or just upgrading the software, doing the server upgrade. That's easy, free. You can do that at the very low. The things that are on the top, this is where you have cold storage, real-time replica backups to some third-party system. That involves a lot of effort. A lot of humans are going to be involved in that process. So there's going to be potential for a lot of things to go wrong. But when the impact is so high, that's why you want to invest that much time into it. And then systematize. Systematizing is where you're taking all of that work that you did you put it all into action. And a few of the things on here, this is some of the stuff that our company really likes to do. The first one is the pen test. This is where we hire third-party hackers effectively to try to hack our systems from all different angles. And then what we get as a result of this is information on how to harden our systems and become better. You do this 1 year and then 2 years and then 3 years and 5 years later, you're very, 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 very safe compared to where you were when we started the journey. The next thing is audits. We employ third-party auditors to come in, and what this audit looks like is they get with our team and we tell them all the things that we're doing to prevent cybercrime, to be safe. What is our cybersecurity posture? And then they audit that to make sure that we are actually doing those things. And they'll give you a report at the end. This is a SOC audit, if you've heard of that, and they will tell us, you are following the rules, or there's a process problem. We've got people or our process is messed up, and then it gives us a chance to fix that. But the audit is very important because then that gives us some assurance to know that we are actually doing the good thing, and then we can tell our clients, hey, our compliance is really high. Fire drills are probably the most underrated piece in the entire puzzle here, and this is where you practice recovering from the what-if scenario. And we took the mindset several years ago that it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And then that changed how we thought about everything. And then so what we started doing are the fire drills. And this is, all right, we're going to come in Monday morning and the team is going to pretend like, hey, we just got ransomed. And something is unavailable. Can we recover from it? The first time that we did this, it was a disaster. It took like 48 hours. It was bad. But when we do it today, it's not as bad. The things that you have to learn going through it the hard way, you can learn some of those going through the fire drill. So if you get an opportunity to be able to do that, build that into your plan, I'd highly encourage it. So my last slide here is low-hanging fruit stuff. I'll save this for the Q&A section. But the main thing on this one is is passwords. Passwords are terrible. If you can use multi-factor authentication in any of your environments, do so as soon as you can, because passwords are more or less useless, and I think all these guys will tell you the same thing. But I'm gonna give it up to Justin now to take it from here.
Thank you, Bill. So I'm Justin Ainsworth. I'm from the Sierra Nevada Brewing Company, and I'm here to give kind of a small, mid-sized brewer perspective on cybersecurity. So, what a lot of people don't always realize is we don't just brew beer, right? We have retail operations, we have restaurants, which have different security challenges than manufacturing. We also do e-commerce. We have on-site and off-site event spaces, and logistics and agriculture. So there's huge difference in the requirements for a restaurant versus a farm. And of course, we have office workers and our brewing systems, and all the things that go with brewing and running a brewery. So one of the most important things when it comes to mitigating risk is network segmentation. So there's no reason for a pump in a brew house to be able to communicate with a point of sale system. So we isolate systems by processes and the need for communication between them. There's also physical considerations. Make sure you're using locked cabinets to protect your switches, your UPSs, the physical equipment that's required to keep the operations up and going, that make sure they're physically secured. That also includes your backups. So if you're still doing tapes, which I know we haven't done many, many years, but make sure the tapes are properly secured, but access to the offline tapes or offline backups, whatever media you're using, make sure that physical access to those is also restricted. So next thing I'm going to talk about is a security incident which we had several years ago. In the afternoon of this day, I got an email from a vendor letting us know that they found an issue with our website and that we should talk immediately about it. So our main gift store website was compromised with a malware known as Matesich. It's around 2018. There's a real common attack back then. From looking at these two sites, can anyone tell the difference, which one's hacked and which one isn't? And they're identical as far as the eyes can see. So after a quick look at the kind of the source code and what kind of runs the website, identify this line of code that looked kind of like some Google Analytics code, if you're familiar with that. When you really look at it, find out it's really, it wasn't. It's actually a malware payload that was being loaded from a site in Russia, which was capturing all the keystrokes from users on the website. So typing in a search box, every time they press a key, that key press was transmitted to the site in Russia. That included usernames, passwords, credit card information, anything that's typed into the website. So once we knew we were compromised, we had to take some immediate actions. We gathered kind of the stakeholders in the company from legal, e-commerce, IS, leadership, and make sure everyone was we'd formed a plan of what to do now to protect us, protect our customers, and to get back to a known good state. So we immediately took the site offline. It was down for about 48 hours. And worked with our legal counsel. We did a privileged investigation and worked with the software vendor to really identify how it happened, what was compromised, who was compromised, and what it would take to get us back up and going again. So to remediate, we returned the site to a known good state by removing the malware, running some validations against the code to make sure that was the expected code, make sure all the system passwords were changed, and use some other tools to analyze for further compromise. There's also some communication requirements. We had to notify necessary third parties of the breach, so that included pretty much every state attorney general, and there were a couple customers in the UK and Europe who were affected, so there became a GDPR issue. So we had to notify them and those governments. So we did a root cause analysis to try to figure out how did this happen and what we could have done to prevent it. One of the big takeaways was analyzing the logs, and we discovered that when the compromise occurred, someone was able to log in with administrative credentials in a single try. So that told us they had the administrative credentials, which it was a username and password which wasn't used by our staff. Everyone always logs into their own username and passwords. So it wasn't something that was captured via a mistake by one of our employees, logging into the site from a compromised system. When we ultimately determined it was from a database backup that a vendor of ours had for some site development work they were doing. So they were compromised, and our copy of our database, which they had, which unfortunately wasn't cleansed of that sensitive data, was compromised. So that's also an important takeaway is make sure you have policies and processes in place when you are sharing data with third parties that it's cleansed to remove any privileged information. So we made some additional recommendations and things we implemented. We restricted administrative console to only be able to be accessed internally. So block the IP addresses that can access the administrative console. Require strong authentication, so MFA and single sign-on. And we also integrated it into our security information event management system to make sure those logs were being aggregated with all our other logs. So that's my last slide. If you have any questions, we can go over those or we can take it now.
How did your distributor figure out you were compromised? Like, what did they see that
So what was a distributor? It's actually the software manufacturer. So they were doing some analysis of their customers, and we had an enterprise agreement with them to for our software and support with them. So they reached out to us to let us know that they discovered some identifiers on the website that made them think we were compromised. So we confirmed that. Okay. I'll go ahead and pass it off to Nate.
All right, clicker works, great. Hey, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Nate Marcinonis. I'm the IT director at Matesich Distributing. A couple facts about who we are. We're a single warehouse distributor in Newark, Ohio, about 110 employees. As of late 2020, we got up to 1-to-1 in terms of employees and endpoints. So every admin person, every sales rep, every driver, every warehouse associate is now a technology endpoint for us. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about our cybersecurity awareness program that we've built, and I'm also going to go into our password philosophy. So if anybody has questions during this, feel free to interrupt, and I think Terry's going to jump in too. We're going to tag team this a little bit. So October, it's Cybersecurity Awareness Month. I don't know if everybody was aware of that, but now you are. So when I talk about cybersecurity, we try and build things through frameworks. So this graphic here is what's called the NIST framework, and it's really just a way to do information security. So there's a couple of them out there. This is the one that we try and use the most as we can to build our program. So cybersecurity awareness lives in the protect function. Let's see. Well, the protect function of the NIST framework, so that's kind of where that lives and how we built that out. And so for us, what that means is we started with security assessments for all of our employees. So Bill talked about taking an inventory of your information assets. We kind of think of this as taking an inventory of where our associates are in terms of awareness of cybersecurity. And so what we wanted to establish a baseline there, and then we also made this part of our onboarding process. So when you're hired, you also take this assessment, and that kind of feeds into the scores around everything, right? And then we do annual training for all of our employees, and we also do quarterly simulated phishing campaigns. I'll talk about those as well. And then really we kind of just keep it casual. We do informal reminders. Anytime we get a chance to send out a newsletter or something that you need to know, we try and do that as well. And then I want to point out that this is all ongoing, right? It's a process. Bill talked about that as well. It's a process, not a project, is kind of how we think of it. And then what we do, so Bill also talked about continuous improvement. We really try and lean into those principles with how we built this program too. So this is yet another framework for continuous improvement. It's called the Lean Six Sigma DMAIC. And you kind of just start at the top, right? You define what process and what it is that you're trying to improve, and you just work your way around. So define should come from your cybersecurity framework. So what are you trying to do? What are you trying to build? And I talked about some of the frameworks there, and I put that last bullet point. Some people don't follow a framework. Some people just fill out a cybersecurity application, and the insurance company comes back and says, okay, well, you need to be doing these things and these things and these things. That can substitute fine for your framework. You know, whatever you need to do to be in compliance with your insurance, that's great too. So the measure part, right? So we're taking an inventory. We're doing the security awareness proficiency assessment. And this is really just how that assessment came back with our associates. It was probably 20 questions. It wasn't very intense. 5-10 minutes, everybody kind of takes and fills this out. It's online, multiple choice. And what this gave us was sort of a jumping off point to go into our analysis and identify key areas, right, that we could target our training, target our program, and continuously improve and continuously get better. So one of the things that we identified for how we can keep this ball rolling is the simulated phishing campaigns. And there's really not a whole lot to it. I mean, you set it up. We looked at the best practices from our vendor and from what we were able to find out online, and everything kind of pointed to quarterly is a good cadence for these. It targets all employees, so every associate at the company has an email address, so that means every associate is a potential threat vector, so these go to every associate. It's varied, and what that means is not everybody gets the same email, the simulated phishing email, and not everybody gets it at once, right? Because if you do that, as soon as the first one gets noticed, the person's head pops up, and then the whole office is aware before they even check their email, before they even got them. So that's another best practice. And then we also wanted to make it easy to report and easy to measure. So we wanted our associates to be able to notify us that they were getting these, and then reporting and getting those metrics is super important especially if you're trying to get better. You want to be able to measure things like that. So this slide is kind of an eye chart. This is the dashboard for the phishing campaigns that we do, and so the important thing here really, this is our first 2 years of simulated phishing. And so if you look at that black line where we started out on the left, right, it's golf, so low score is better. That first phishing campaign all the way on the left, we had a ton of people clicking. We had a ton of people opening the email. We had a ton of people doing things that they shouldn't be doing, right? We didn't tell anybody when we started this that it was going out, so they were completely unaware that this had started. And then you can see, yeah.
Did you use the service when you did the first one of these?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. So I'm not going to, I'll let you know who we use and all that. I didn't put any brands up here, just because I guess for whatever reason. But yeah, I can share that with you for sure. This was a company called Know Before. Yeah, that's the dashboard. So you can see as we moved along here, we started to do training, and you see that line come down. We started to do more training, see that line come down. People kind of, in general, became aware, right? See that line come down. continuous improvement is what we're preaching. So, and I talked a little bit about making it easy for them to report this. Those green bars right there, what we did is we did some training and we rolled out just a little button that lives in your email. And it's a one-click. It reports the email to our IT department. It cleans it out of your inbox. And these green bars here are people who have successfully identified the testing email, right? So the button works on any email. You can report real phishing or simulated phishing. But those, so you can see where that's we're having success with that, with people reporting these simulated phishing emails. So it's pretty cool to see, I think. And then this is really just a continuous improvement measurement. This is a composite score for how people are doing on the phishing test, how people are doing completing the training in time, and all that stuff. And so, again, we just want to see this trend down. Low score is better. And we love to be in that green quadrant there, right? It's kind of just what we're looking for. Okay, I'm going to talk a little bit about our training philosophy. And as a company, right, we talk about training just as a whole company. And we want it to be seen as employee development. We want it to be seen as being offered as a benefit for our associates. It's not a punishment. It's not something that you got to check a box. So that's how we try and think of it as a company. And then in sort of cybersecurity specifically, we try and keep it simple. And we want to use content that people can carry over into their personal life, because all the training is going to be pretty much the same. But not everybody's job is the same, so maybe it doesn't always apply to everybody's job in the same way. So if you have training content that people can use in their personal lives, right? Because we all have personal email addresses, we all have bank information online, health information, stuff like that. If we can do that and sort of create those habits and build that good hygiene in somebody's personal life, that's going to carry over to what they do at work every day. So the ladder is up there because this is a true story. I came in one morning and I had an email that said, I've been assigned ladder safety training. And I was like, okay. I sit at my desk most of the day. I'm not really up on ladders. I can understand why some people need ladder safety training, but and it was literally that week I was on a ladder at home changing a light bulb, right? So it's like, oh, okay, this is something good that I can apply to my personal life. And now, if I am up on a ladder at the office, I got the training. Good to go. Okay, so going back to keeping it simple. The question at the top of this slide is, if this was in your break room, would you read this? I wouldn't, right? That's a step above, or maybe even a step below, like the ingredient label on your soup can. Like, nobody is going to read this if you post it in the break room. I mean, everybody's got their phone, the TV's on. Nobody's given this a second thought. I'm sure the information, I never even read it before I put it on the slides. I'm sure the information is good. It's great, but if nobody reads it, what is it getting you? So how about this stuff, right? This catches your eye. This presents a clear and concise message, right? Maybe it starts a conversation. It brings that to the front of people's minds, even if they don't dwell on it for more than a couple minutes, right? It's kind of bringing it to the front of their mind, right? And that is more effective than that, in my opinion. Okay, another thing that we do, we try and key our training in is seasonality, right? All the products that we sell are seasonal, some of them. And so are the scammers and the fraudsters and the threat actors. So a lot of the advice you get is, if you're not expecting that email, right, treat it with suspicion. Well, what if you got an email this morning that said, hey, don't forget to set your fantasy lineup, right? You might be expecting that. So back to school, holidays, as we move into the holidays, tax time, you are expecting that email to, hey, your W-2's ready. So the training needs to be seasonal because the threats are seasonal, is what I'm trying to get across here. And then with the training, are you sending the right message? So our philosophy really is, unless there's a really, really bad situation, you don't always have to do one-on-one like remedial training, right? We try and target our training in the aggregate. So we look at the whole company, how we're doing as a whole company, and we try and target our training as the whole, not the individual, right? And then I think we do a pretty good job as far as challenges and incentives. A classic tactic that we do at our company, and this is not just cybersecurity training, but we'll break people into groups, teams, and we'll name those teams after beer brands that we sell, and we'll set up a contest, and there'll be incentives, and it kind of breeds that healthy competition, which I think is good and is a good strategy to get to your goals. Okay, any questions about how we're doing training before I move on to passwords? No? Good. Cool. Okay, so our password policy is pretty simple at its core, right? The first thing there, 15 characters long. No complexity. You don't have to have a number. You don't have to have a character, a special character or anything like that. And then the 3 golden rules, right? Don't share it with anybody. Don't write it down. Stick it under your keyboard or on your monitor. And don't use it other places all around the internet, right? And so 15 characters, I know what everybody's thinking because this, to me it's obvious, right? How does that work? And we do that because we want to encourage passphrases instead of passwords. So a passphrase is going to be strong just because of the length, right? And it's also going to be easy to remember because it's a phrase, not a word. And so it's easier to remember that way. So beer is good for you is a great example of a passphrase. Like I said, it's strong because it's long, and it's easy to remember. In 2022, you are not going to fool anybody by changing out every E for a 3 in your password. You're not going to fool anybody changing out every O for a 0. That just doesn't work anymore, right? It's also bad, like, you know, if you have to change your password every 90 days, what you end up with is summer 2022, winter 2022, spring 2023, every 90 days, right? And so we think of passwords as just hard to remember or weak, right? You can make them easy to remember, but they might not be as strong. Like I said, the common substitutions. And then personal information. A lot of people, you know, if your password is your dog's name, that's probably going to be pretty easy to find out, and it's going to float to the top of the list of anybody who's trying to guess anything about you out there. So, and then the 3 golden rules, right? If your internet browser looks like mine and you have 100 tabs open, that means you have 100 different websites that you're going to all the time. You have a lot of accounts. So how am I going to do this, right? If I'm not allowed to use the same password everywhere, I need 100 different passwords that I can't reuse, right? How are we going to do that? Well, you need to provide your employees with tools in order to follow your policies, right? Your policies are to keep you safe. You need tools to be able to follow those policies. So single sign-on is at the top. Really that is using one password system that works on multiple systems. So it's not the same password everywhere. It's one system that grants access to multiple systems, right? And what that's going to do is shrink the amount of accounts that you need to manage, shrink the attack surface, so to speak, and make it easier for you. The next thing that we do for all of our employees is provide a password manager. And what that is like a locked vault, an encrypted vault that's behind a really good master password that contains all your other passwords. And this will really do a lot for you. This allows you to generate extremely strong passwords for any website that you go to. It's going to allow you to make them all unique. So all of my passwords are all just complete gibberish. You don't need to remember them because they're in the password vault. As long as you keep your master password safe, and by the way, we can monitor that. We can make sure everybody's master password is good and is safe. It's gonna do that for you. And then it's going to reduce, maybe eliminate all that, what I call password administration, right? You're resetting your password. Oh, it can't be your last 5 passwords, so come up with another one. Or you forgot your password, or you're trying to do your recovery, whatever. This is going to pretty much eliminate all that. It's going to alleviate a lot of frustration around what you're doing with passwords and how your people are managing them themselves. And then, I'd be negligent if I didn't mention multi-factor authentication. That's been brought up here, right? That's just the text that you get on your phone when you log into your bank account. That's a second factor, so the password and the code. And at a minimum, you should be doing that for any access to your internal systems from outside your building at a minimum. I mean, your insurance provider is going to drop you if you're not doing that today. And then, really best practice is to be doing it wherever you can. Everywhere that it's available, go ahead and do it. Okay. How are we doing on time? Okay? Good. All right. A quick note about security questions, and the answer is that I hate them. I think they're a bad way to recover accounts. And so what's your social security number? What's your mother's maiden name? What's the name of your childhood pet? All that stuff is going to be pretty easy to find out. If you Google my name, it's like the second page is going to tell you what high school I went to. From there, you can find, the town I grew up in, all that stuff. So security questions to me, unless they're really good and purposely selected that way, they're not going to be very strong. They're going to be very easy to socially engineer someone and then use that to recover your account and get in as you. So my advice, this is something that I heard a long time ago, right? If you have to set answers to security questions, what's your mother's maiden name? LeBron James. What's the name of your first childhood pet? That's right, LeBron James. Don't pick LeBron James. I'm just a Cavs fan, so I put his name up there, or his picture. Use a historical figure or an athlete or some obscure something, right, that's going to be impossible to socially engineer, because hopefully your dog's name isn't LeBron James. And it's going to give you an easy way to recover your accounts if this is something you have to do. It's not related to the question at all. So I thought that was a pretty clever way to do that, and I definitely recommend it. So this is my last slide. I hope the takeaways were kind of evident as we went through this, but for me and for us, cybersecurity is so much psychology and people. Bill, what was it, 95% of attacks involve another person or human intervention. So just make sure that your messaging and your training is landing, because you can build out so many security controls, and you can spend a ton of money doing that to have them just be circumvented so easily by somebody who lacks the proper training and the proper tools. Don't reinvent the wheel. Everything that I covered today is not something that I sat down and thought about and made up. Right? This is all out there, all these best practices, all these frameworks. I've pieced this together through conferences like this and webinars, and picked and choose kind of what applied to our environment. So it's all out there. It's daunting, but the information is there. Make sure your tools and policies align to drive your goals. I love this one. This is really kind of about our password policy, because our password policy, in my opinion, is impossible to follow without the tools that we've provided. So the policy sets your goals, and then you want the tools to drive that adoption. And then really, I think everybody's kind of touched on this, but it's a process, not a project. And so continuous improvement, you want to keep getting better and monitor, and it's a process. So that's all I have today. So if anybody has questions, Jim, yeah?
The owner or general manager and you're not the chief technical officer, how do you assess your chief technical officer's performance relative to cybersecurity? Should you, if they're not, in other words, what would be your steps that you would advise as an audit of what you're doing the first and primary way, so an outsider comes in and assesses what you're doing and basically verifies that, or what would you suggest?
Yeah, I mean, you said it there. Do an audit, have a third party come in. We had that done in, I think it was 2018 or 19, and this individual interviewed our people. They talked about our policies, and they provided us a really good write-up of the controls that we had, the controls that we were lacking. They ranked where we were not sufficient in terms of impact and likelihood, and then we were able to kind of flip that around and go after those things. But you need buy-in from the top, right? You need them involved in that process, because if an unfavorable report comes back, you don't want it to be able to just be filed away and nobody ever sees it. So get buy-in and involvement in the top, and get them thinking about this stuff too, and hopefully understand why it's important, and share the results with them for sure. Yeah.
Do you all use additional software such as Barracuda, gateway protection, quarantine, in addition to all the training?
Yeah, actually Barracuda is the one that we do. So
I was going to ask what you think of it.
I'm happy with Barracuda for sure. It seems to me to be kind of in the middle of the price tier in terms of those specific tools. And it does a couple nice things for us. I mean, it provides insight to all that stuff. It allows us to block Japan, right? Japan can't send us any emails. Just because we don't do any business in Japan, we don't see a need for that. So it allows us to do that. And then the other thing that it allows us to do, which is a great feature, is kind of like a secure encrypted messaging, where if we want to send something that's sensitive, we can. They make it really easy. You can just put encrypted in the subject line, and it'll go through to your recipient, and then they have to kind of. It's not just out in the open for them. They have to go through the Barracuda channels in order to access that. So we do use Barracuda, and we like it, and we'll continue.
All right. I'm Terry Tenius with Grey Eagle Distributors in St. Louis, Missouri, and I'm filling in for our friends from Florida. And I just wanted to share some of our experiences that we have, and I feel better already after hearing Nate, and I can sleep at night because I think we're doing many of the same things that Nate is doing. And can you do everything possible? You can try to do everything possible, but there's still somebody out there that may come after you as far as that goes. But I wanted to talk about KnowBe4 is one of the applications that Nate and we use as well too. And the first time we sent out an email, the owner was like, "Well, why did you send it from me?" And because the people aren't going to click on Best Buy gift cards or Hey Google, whatever the case may be. So it's like, and just to see the response from, all right, who's all clicking on that email and finding out. And looking at those individuals, or what do we need to do to make people more aware of the obvious things that are coming in, and it could be just an A and E spelled backwards or whatever the case may be. So doing something out of the ordinary, and like Nate said too, it's not doing it all at the same time, so that they do. The employees will get together and they'll talk about hey, did you get this email, and things like that. So it causes them to think about what they're doing and things like that. And we do also do the same thing that Nate and team does, is that we're not punishing our people. We're about educating them. And those that continually do some of the same things, the clicking we do, we'll put them through the training process as far as that goes, and then they're spreading that word too. So that does a whole lot. The other thing too that we do, we try to protect ourselves. So we're backing up. That's not necessarily with our RAS provider and things like that, but any data that we're storing, we do have a 15-minute backup, and we can do it sooner, we can do it less often as far as that goes, but we figure that was a good point for us. So we're backing that data to the cloud to make sure that we're protected. And then the other piece is too, we test it too. How can we get that information back? It's good to save it to the cloud, and you might pay a penny, a gig, or whatever the case may be, but can you get it back? How quickly can you get it back as far as that goes too? So some of the things to look at there. We also do intrusion testing. We hire a third party to basically do the hacks and see what they can get in, what they can find out about our system. Our largest supplier now is participating with wholesalers, because there's wholesalers out there that have been in situations where they've been hacked. So they are providing a deep dive into the system and to point out where the pros and cons as far as that goes too. So I think that bodes well for the supplier. Another thing that we've been in a situation where one of our vendors, they were hacked, and it was an email. So it's what do you call it, the mad in the middle attack, where they compromised the email and started sending things back to us and wanted us to change their ACH, the routing file number. And I'm telling you, it's so easy to do and get caught by that. But we've instituted a policy where if anybody's wanting to change their bank account number, we must speak live before we do any of that information, because it looks so legitimate, and they're talking to you about things that you just talked to them about last week, and it's so easy to happen. So pick up the phone and make sure you're calling your vendors about situations like that, just to keep yourself safe. And I think too, many of the obvious things that we're all doing, but it's worth talking about. Two-factor authentication. I mean, yes, we all probably think that's a pain in the ass, but at the end of the day, if it keeps you from getting something that you shouldn't, it's well worth it as far as that goes. So I think, Nate's doing a good job. My people are doing a good job. At the end of the night, are we doing everything possible that we can? And I think we are. Are we still vulnerable? Could be, but we're trying to lessen that effect as far as that goes. So look at the options that are out there, investigate them, and do everything that you can to protect yourself.
All right. Derek,
Yeah, Joe.
would you say, which is the larger threat? Somebody in-house going to a site that they, pick a file up or a picture
Yeah.
or a video or whatever, and download it onto your system versus answering a phishing email with a link that's going to provide some malware or something else to your system?
Unfortunately, it's internal, and you've got some people that are great. They know what they're getting themselves into and what they shouldn't click on. But I do think it's some of internal people going out to websites and thinking they're in a good spot. And similar to what Justin said too, where it looks legit, but it's not legit. And they just have to do everything that they possibly can to ensure that they know what they're getting into and clicking in. And if in doubt, reach out to IT in order to make sure that nothing has been downloaded onto the system. And I think what you'll also find out in this too, and I think you see this with Nate, it's the personal touch. You think IT, you have systems and strategy in place, but my person, Nate, and others are out there checking the systems at night. What's happening, what kind of hits are you getting, and things like that. And I think you have to just continue to do that as well. Continue to do that and educate.
One thing I want to add to that is there are services out there that will scan every link in the emails your employees receive. So we use Safe Links, part of Microsoft's package. So every URL goes through them when they're clicked, and they validate whether or not it's a valid site for them to be going to.
Yeah, Barracuda will do that as well.
Right. Yep. I think it kind of depends on the person. The type of person that would go to a website that's got dangerous stuff to download, they're probably not the person that's going to click on the link that's coming over, because they're somewhat aware of cybersecurity in the first place. That's why they're in the bad website. But like the general users aren't going to be somewhere where they shouldn't be online. And they're more likely to get phished by an email, and so it kind of depends on the person. But what it all goes back to is the human error part, right? Is very pervasive.
Dan.
I'm not the IT expert. It's my fault if it goes wrong. How do you determine how to right-size the size of your IT team to watch for security? Like, checkbook question is, I need 5 people. Do you need 5? Is it 1 for everybody users? What's the rule about how to design a business?
That's a tough question to answer. I think, in our situation, as the business evolves and people take on additional responsibilities, that I think we could use more people for IT, because you think of 350 people, and I've got an IT director and an assistant there. But, if we're investing in the technology, some of the third parties, whether it's intrusion testing, many of the things that we're doing now, whether you're a route accounting system or whatever the case, they're on the cloud. So we're trying to minimize those situations. But you have to find a person. If you get that one or two people that are running the show, you have to find those people that are really dedicated to doing that during the business hours, and then also looking at it in the evening or on the weekend. And not that they're having to monitor it all the time, but they still have to, there's things that have to be done after hours or just to check on things. So I don't have a good answer for you in terms of is it 5? Is it based upon the number of employees? I don't know. I mean, I guess if you've been in a situation where you've been hacked, well, then do I need 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 versus the one that I currently have today? So.
And that, when we did the webinar in the spring, that was one of the first questions was, I think almost each of our presenters, talked about everything they were investing in, but each of them had already suffered an attack. Each of them had that negative example that they could take to leadership and say, this can't happen again. How do you convince folks to invest before, show them examples of what happened to other people, and convince them that now's the time to invest to prevent this from happening to our business.
And I think too that also depends. What I would add to that too is, do you use a third party? You have an IT person, but do you have a third party that also supports that person too? Then maybe you can minimize the amount of staff that you have in-house.
Yeah, I think a good person with the right tools
Yep.
and investing in what we kind of call is like a force multiplier, whether that's a partner, whether that's a service, whether that's a tool that they can utilize to really kind of key in on your goals and what you're trying to do, would be better than security people are expensive.
Yeah.
And so if you're hiring sort of on a budget, I think that those services and those force multipliers are a better investment, because the right person with the right tools is going to be better off for you.
Yeah.
I know you talked about before, and I've looked into that. They have a subscription, so when you say you send out the emails,
Yeah.
do you use their subscription where they analyze everything and give you back the answers, or they also have the free things that you can send out and look at it that way? Which do you go to?
We did the subscription piece.
Yeah, we started it with the free tier just to kind of see what it was about. I mean, we started this, I think, in 2018 or something. It was very early on. And so we weren't even really sold as far as, can this do anything for us?
Right.
I mean, it's come a long way.
Yeah.
I think it's a best practice now. If you're not doing this, you're kind of behind at this point. So, yeah, we had the subscription, and they have different tiers to fit your budget. And it's really all about, what kind of capabilities you want.
Yeah. And we can talk about that offline too if you want. We can share some of the costs or things that we're using as far as that goes.
We'll go here, then here.
You guys, did you set up any kind of manual backup system if you're down for a number of days? There was a story out of Tennessee where liquor wholesale was shut down for a whole week, and turning the complaints out of the marketplace and that kind of thing. If you were down for a number of days, what do you do?
So I had a slide in there, Dave, that went missing. I'm just kidding. It wasn't about that exactly. But you have to have a plan, right? One of the steps is, what do you do when this happens? And so the backup is the mitigation, right? Backup is part of the mitigation strategy. And then so I think that, and most of you guys have a backup running in some form or fashion. Having a backup set up is step number one. Step number two is the plan. I'm like, what do we do when this happens to us? And where I talked about the fire drill, practicing recovering from that backup, you don't want the first time that you recover from backup to be when the shit hits the fan. Hopefully you've practiced it a few times before so that it doesn't take a week to come back online. The Colonial Pipeline example, they paid like 5 hours in, but it took a week to get back online because it took so long to recover from that, from where they were, that you obviously they never practiced, right? And it would take a really long time. So having a backup is kind of like, yeah, everybody has a backup, but can you use it? That's kind of a bigger question.
Yeah, I think, Greg's slides talked about the tier list, right? And route accounting system was all the way at the top, as it should be. And so it's going to be different for everybody. But if you're hosting your own route accounting system today, yeah, you need to be sure about what you're doing and how you can recover from that, because that is all on you. If your route accounting system is hosted in their cloud, in the software provider's cloud, you need to be asking them what their capabilities are and making a business decision about if you're comfortable with that level of risk.
Go back here back, and then, go ahead. Yeah.
So you talk about password managers. Now we use Chrome, and if I'm on a website, it says suggest strong password, and then of course you have your password to get in there. Is that a method you recommend, or you like the third party ones like LastPass or something like that?
I like LastPass quite a bit because it's a way for our IT, capabilities to manage that ourselves. If that's not there and that works for you, I think that's fine. What LastPass and those things will be able to do for you is to measure compliance with your policies. It will give you, we talk so much about taking an inventory of things. That's an inventory of all your accounts and all your passwords right there. You know what I mean? You don't think about you're paying for that functionality, but that's sort of built into it. And then it'll also do breach monitoring as well. So all those accounts that live out there, if something is breached and exposed, it'll notify you, and then you can kind of take it from there in terms of, okay, what else do I need to be worried about? Am I using this password in a bunch of other different places? What's my exposure to this? So and your IT team can handle that for you. It's not on you at that point.
We've talked about preventing and policies and procedures to avoid this, but generally speaking, cyber insurance, do you find it cost-effective and comforting, or,
I want to second that.
It's harder to get. It's becoming increasingly more difficult to get somebody to cover you, and especially if you don't have a framework or a plan, or you can't present to them that there are at least some bars over the windows, then they're not going to insure you, right? And it's...
I understand that.
So
we went down that path before we did MFA, and they said, well, yeah, I'll sell you a policy. It'll have, high deductible and basically no coverage.
Correct.
So once you do the things you need to do, I just don't, I haven't really.
So,
well, and even going through the process of the questions, it's exhaustive, because they're asking things that most of us, maybe some of us, have to go out and what the hell are they actually talking about in terms of that, because it's something we're never going to do. But it is a tough decision, because you're going to have to weigh the cost of the actual policy, or it's going out and finding something else from some other broker out there that you're used to dealing with, and we do that same thing as far as that goes too. It's like, well, if you're going to charge us $25,000 for $25,000 worth of coverage, do we need to be there? But yeah, it's a tough question there.
And without it, it limits your options. Right?
Exactly.
If one of your
Yes, it
options is
very
paying
much
a
limits your
ransom,
options.
you may not be able to do that without insurance.
Right.
our journey through that decision really started, we carried it for years before we kind of had a good formalized cybersecurity plan. And so what happened was, you know, I'd fill out the questionnaire every year. It wasn't really all that rigorous. I mean, this was probably 2015, 2013, that time frame.
That's changed.
Yeah. And then I saw the premiums that we were paying for this, you know, and I'm like, they don't really make any effort or onus on us to make any improvements or anything like that. I'm looking at what it costs, and I'm like, I can take that money and actually do something, right? I can I can put in these tools and hire, get an audit and take that money and do things with it that aren't insurance. And now that we're doing these things, right, we've revisited that and now we do, so we dropped the insurance for a while and then we built this kind of program and made those investments and now we have insurance again. And so we feel like maybe once you have a mature program, it's a worthy investment. But if you're not doing anything, I'm not sure that insurance is going to help you at this point. So hopefully that helps you.
So, you as IT leaders, you were working with your risk management guy to acquire insurance. I'm sure you knew. You just said eventually you started looking at the premium you were paying and said, well, I'm not real confident I'm getting a lot for that, and maybe I can do more myself.
Right.
And kind of went down your path of policy.
First of all, are you ready to get the insurance? Because many distributors, many businesses aren't ready to get this insurance. Right? You have the things in place.
Yeah.
And then the second question is there value to purchasing a $100,000 policy?
Correct.
To get the money back. Again, between what we talked about, the premium versus the payout.
Yeah. And it's really, as owners, it's do you have the confidence in your team that they're doing everything possible to protect the business? And there's still things that can happen, but at the end of the day, I think my owner feels like we're doing everything we possibly can and keeping the business safe without incurring these ungodly costs for coverage that will protect us minimally.
The other thing it does is it gives your policy some teeth, right? If your insurance says that you got to be doing these certain things and you turn that around and make a corporate policy out of it, and somebody says, well, I don't want to do that. Why do I have to do that? Well, there's a good reason.
Okay, one last question, then I think we're about at time.
Policy, I'm just curious, does anyone know, like the mechanics behind making a ransom payment? Meaning, like, they're working with criminals, they're asking for money, I'm assuming they're going to want to over crypto, like, how does it work? Like, I mean, if you guys don't know that it's fine, but like, I'm going down the path, okay, worst case scenario, you have to make that payment, you submit $100,000, $200,000. Is there like an escrow account involved? Like, does anybody know how that actually works?
I don't know. Don't want to find out.
Lots of horror stories.
Yeah.
I actually know the answer to this. So, I have a friend who's a lawyer who his job is to pay off these criminals. If they take your money and they don't pay you, they'll never get money again. So they always give you, if you pay, right, they usually always give you the security back, and they buy the crypto. Right. So you're going to pay them off with crypto, and it's always, and you probably have a better than 90% chance of them giving you the money back because they want their money.
You can hire negotiators on your behalf. Your insurance company can hook you up with those people. The ransomware operators, I've seen it where you can call them and they'll answer the phone and help you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And that's the level of sophistication.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Unbelievable. Well, hey, can we give this group panel a big round of applause?